Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. It all started on a quiet Thursday night in New York. Maya and Adrian sat by the window of her small apartment, the hum of traffic below mixing with the soft tapping of rain against the glass. Her phone buzzed once, the screen lighting up with a message from an unknown number. The contract remains unchanged. I only need you to agree to be my wife for 1 month. She frowned, reading it twice. Some kind of prank, she thought. She typed back, sorry, wrong number. But before she could set the phone down, another message arrived. Wait, do not hang up. I think fate just saved me from a bigger disaster. Then the phone rang. She hesitated, curiosity winning over caution. On the other end was a calm, steady male voice. Miss Tran, he said, this is Adrian Cole. The name sounded faintly familiar, then it hit her. Adrian Cole, the tech billionaire whose engagement had just collapsed in front of every tabloid headline in the country. I am sorry. I think you have the wrong person, she stammered. Maybe not, he replied. I was trying to reach my assistant about a marriage contract, but perhaps this mistake was not one after all. You sound honest. The way he said it made her heartbeat quicken. Within minutes, the unbelievable was unfolding. He needed someone to pose as his wife for 30 days until his company's IPO was finalized. The original fiancé had walked out, leaving the media hungry and the board anxious. It would be strictly professional public appearances, a few photo ops, nothing more. In exchange, she would receive enough money to pay her mother's medical bills and keep her apartment. It is not romance, Adrian said flatly. It is business. Think of it as a contract. Maya swallowed hard. Her life had been collapsing piece by piece. Her mother's oxygen tank had to be replaced. Rent was due in 3 days. And here, out of nowhere, a man she had never met was offering a solution wrapped in madness. You want me to marry you, she said slowly, for business reasons? Exactly, he replied. You would help me, and I would help you. There was silence for a long moment, the rain hitting harder against the window. She could almost hear her heartbeat in her ears. Send me the details, she whispered finally. That night, she barely slept. The next morning, she found herself standing in front of a marble building downtown, her reflection staring back from the glass doors. Inside, everything gleamed silver elevators, crystal lights, people in tailored suits. She felt painfully out of place in her worn coat and rain-soaked shoes. Adrian Cole was waiting at the top floor, looking exactly like the magazine cover stall, sharp, untouchable. He studied her for a long second before speaking. You are early, he said. That is a good sign. She forced a smile, clutching the strap of her purse. I'm still not sure I understand why you're doing this. Adrian's tone was calm, but distant. Because the world believes what it sees. A stable marriage will calm investors and silence gossip. And you, he paused, eyes softening for a fraction of a second. You do not belong to that world. That makes you believable. The words stung and comforted her all at once. Minutes later, she sat across from his lawyer as the document was laid out before her 5 pages of rules and clauses. No physical intimacy. No sharing personal information. Attend 5 events as Mrs. Cole. Payment released in full upon completion. She signed. The pen trembled in her hand as Adrian slid a velvet box toward her. Inside was a sapphire ring, beautiful, but he said quietly, "It is imitation. Just in case someone gets curious." She nodded, understanding the irony. A fake ring for a fake marriage. When she looked up, he was already watching her with that unreadable expression, the one that made her feel seen and judged all at once. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Cole, he said. And for the first time, Maya realized she had stepped into a story that was going to change everything. The sound of her name still echoed in Maya's mind as she stepped out of the law office. Mrs. Cole. The marble floors reflected her uneasy face while the city lights glimmered outside the tall windows. That night, She returned to her small apartment for what would be the last time. The next morning, a sleek black car waited at the curb to take her to the penthouse. The driver opened the door in silence, and for the entire ride, she stared at her reflection in the tinted glass, wondering what kind of life she had just signed herself into. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Maya froze. The place looked like a private museum more than a home. Polished floors, walls of glass, and art pieces that looked too expensive to breathe near. Adrian stood by the window, hands in his pockets, the skyline painting a silver outline around him. "You will stay here for the next month," he said without turning around. "My assistant has arranged your wardrobe and media schedule. Appearances begin tomorrow." She nodded quietly. Every word he spoke sounded rehearsed, professional, cold. "There are rules," he continued. "No interviews without my approval. No contact with the press. And we keep our story consistent." His tone softened just a fraction. "You will be safe here, Maya." Safe. The word felt both comforting and foreign. Later that evening, she wandered through the penthouse, every corner immaculate, every surface gleaming. In her small room, she found neatly folded dresses, shoes still wrapped in tissue, and a handwritten note from his assistant, "Welcome, Mrs. Cole." She placed her worn sketchbook on the vanity, a small reminder of who she really was. The next day began with chaos. Photographers outside the building shouted questions as the security team escorted them to the car. Maya kept her eyes down, her heart racing. Inside the vehicle, Adrian scrolled through his phone, unaffected by the flashbulbs exploding outside. "They will forget in a week," he said. "Just smile when you need to." The first public event was a charity dinner. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and polished silver. Maya's gown, though stunning, felt like armor. As they walked in, conversations hushed. Cameras turned. Adrian leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Remember, act like you belong here." She did her best to smile, but her hands trembled as she reached for a glass of water. The first person to greet them was a board member's wife, her diamonds catching the light. "So this is the mysterious Mrs. Cole," she said with a polite but cutting smile. "Where did you two meet?" Maya hesitated. Adrian stepped in smooth. "At a private art auction in Brooklyn. She has an eye for beauty." Maya managed a smile, surprised at how natural he made it sound. Throughout the evening, she tried to blend in, but small mistakes betrayed her: Nervisa mispronounced wine name, a napkin folded wrong, a glance that lingered too long on the ornate decorations. Yet when Adrian quietly corrected her, his tone was never cruel, just patient. Between courses, a reporter slipped through the crowd. "Mr. Cole, is it true your engagement ended only weeks ago? And now you are married?" Adrian's jaw tightened. Maya's pulse spiked. Without missing a beat, he placed a gentle hand on hers and said, "When you know, you know. Sometimes love does not wait." Cameras flashed. The crowd murmured. And for a second, Maya forgot that any of this was fake. Later that night, back at the penthouse, she kicked off her heels and exhaled deeply. "You handled that well," Adrian said, loosening his tie. "You looked like you meant it." She gave a tired laugh. "Maybe I did." For a second, he looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "You're doing fine, Maya. Better than fine." Then he turned away, walking toward his office, the moment passing like a shadow. Alone again, she sat on the couch and pulled out her sketchbook. The pages were filled with charcoal sketches of her old life, her mother, her neighborhood, the city from her apartment window. She stared at the blank page for a long time before writing in the corner, "Fake wife, real feelings?" Downstairs, Adrian stood by the window, watching the city below. The lie was working. The company's stock was steady. The headlines were kind. But the image of Maya's uncertain smile lingered in his mind longer than it should have. He told himself it was just part of the act. Yet, deep down, he already knew the line between contract and emotion was beginning to blur. Days turned into weeks, and the contract that had started as a desperate exchange began to feel like a strange new reality. Maya woke each morning in a penthouse where silence echoed louder than words. Every day followed the same rhythm: photo appearances, briefings with Adrian's assistant, perfectly staged smiles. Yet somewhere between the endless charity luncheons and interviews, something subtle began to change. Adrian started walking her to the car himself, asking if she had eaten, noticing when she was cold. It was small, almost unspoken, but real. One night, after a long corporate gala, the two of them returned home past midnight. The city lights shimmered across the skyline, and Maya slipped out of her heels with a sigh. "You do not have to keep pretending when no one is watching," she said quietly. Adrian loosened his cufflinks, his expression unreadable. "Pretending is easier than feeling," he said. She looked at him, trying to understand the man behind the headlines. "You make it sound like feeling is a weakness." He met her eyes for the first time in days. "It can be, if you have learned that love is leverage." His voice was low, bitter but honest. For the first time, Maya saw something beyond the polished surface loneliness. Without thinking, she said, "Maybe love is leverage, but so is kindness." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled faintly, almost to himself. "You are very strange, Mrs. Cole." She smiled back. "So are you, Mr. Cole." That small moment broke the distance between them. The following week, Adrian invited her to visit the LumaPay headquarters. It was the heart of his empire: glass walls, hundreds of employees, screens flashing numbers she could not even comprehend. He watched her as she looked around, amazed. "You built all this?" she asked. "From nothing," he said. "No family money, no help, just a lot of sleepless nights." She nodded, impressed. But what she saw most was not wealth, it was exhaustion disguised as success. During lunch in the executive cafeteria, she noticed a janitor struggling to carry a heavy box. Without hesitation, she stood up, crossed the room, and helped him. Cameras clicked and the corner employees whispering. Adrian followed her gaze, realizing everyone was watching. Later, when the story of Mrs. Cole helping staff went viral online, the public began to see her as the soul behind the empire. "You just boosted our reputation overnight," Adrian said with a teasing smile. "I was just being decent," she replied. "That is what people do when they are not pretending." That night, while Adrian worked late in his office, Maya found herself alone on the balcony. The city stretched beneath her, alive and restless. She pulled her mother's silver necklace from her collar and whispered, "I hope you are proud of me, Mom." She did not notice Adrian standing behind her. "She would be," he said softly. Maya turned, startled. He was holding 2 mugs of tea. "Could not sleep either?" he asked. "Too many lights," she replied. He handed her 1 mug and leaned on the railing beside her. For the first time, the silence between them felt warm. "When I was a kid," he said, staring at the skyline, "I used to sleep in a car with my mom. She worked 3 jobs. I promised her that one day I would never worry about money again. I kept that promise, but I lost something else along the way." Maya listened quietly. "Maybe you just forgot what you were trying to protect," she said. "Money can fix a lot, but not everything." He nodded slowly. "And what does fix everything, Maya?" She smiled sadly. "Being human. Remembering that." The words hung in the air, fragile and true. He looked at her differently after that night. The next morning, his assistant noticed the change too. Adrian's schedule began including lunch break with Maya and gallery visit. He even canceled one of his business dinners, choosing instead to join her at a small art show in Brooklyn. She was radiant there, surrounded by colors and laughter. "You belong here," he said quietly as she admired a painting. "Not in those boardrooms." "And you?" she asked. "Where do you belong?" He looked down for a moment, still trying to figure that out. As they left, a sudden rain began to fall. Without thinking, he shrugged off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. She laughed softly. "You will catch a cold, Mr. Cole." "Then we will be miserable together," he replied. For the first time, Maya did not feel like a hired stranger. She felt seen, maybe even cherished. But deep inside, a quiet fear grew. Their contract had an expiration date. And as her feelings deepened, she began to wonder what would happen when time ran out. By the time the 3rd week arrived, the line between duty and desire had begun to blur completely. Maya tried to remind herself that this was temporary, a performance, a business arrangement sealed by signatures and schedules. Yet every time Adrian looked at her across the breakfast table, The world outside the penthouse seemed to fade. Their routine had softened. He brewed her coffee instead of the housekeeper. She cooked him noodles from a family recipe that he pretended to dislike, but finished anyway. They started laughing more small, genuine moments that no contract could script. One evening, after a long meeting with investors, Adrian found her asleep on the couch, her sketchbook open beside her. Inside, he saw a charcoal drawing of the two of them standing under an umbrella, faceless but unmistakably close. He smiled faintly, closed the book, and covered her with a blanket. The next morning, Maya woke to find a new set of art supplies on her desk and a note in his handwriting, "For when you need to remember who you are." The gesture touched her more than she expected, but the warmth between them would soon be tested. A formal charity event was approaching, one hosted by Adrian's ex-fiancée, Vanessa Sterling, a woman whose name alone made the media spin. The invitation arrived embossed in gold, and though Maya tried to hide her nerves, Adrian noticed. "You do not have to go if you are uncomfortable," he said. "The contract says I do," she replied gently. "And besides, I am not afraid of her." The night of the gala shimmered with cameras and whisper gossip. Vanessa approached with a perfect smile, her tone dripping with polished venom. "Maya, you're even lovelier than the photos. I suppose Adrian always did have a type, kind eyes and soft hearts." Maya smiled politely. "That sounds like a compliment." "Thank you." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Tell me, how is married life treating you? Must be strange jumping from the service industry into society pages." The jab hit deep, but Maya stayed calm. "Strange, yes," she said softly. "But kindness fits everywhere, does it not?" Adrian appeared just in time to take her hand. "Excuse us," he said smoothly, guiding Maya away. "You handled that beautifully," he murmured. "Was she right?" Maya asked. "Do I look strange next to you?" Adrian stopped and turned to face her. "You make everything else look out of place." The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. The gala continued, but Maya's heart beat too fast. Later that night, on the drive home, neither spoke. The city lights flickered over their faces like reflections of the feelings they could no longer hide. At the penthouse, she finally broke the silence. "How long can we keep pretending?" she asked. Adrian hesitated, then said quietly, "Until it stops feeling like pretending." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Tell me, Maya, has it stopped for you?" She searched his eyes, unsure whether to answer. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I do not know." He smiled faintly. "Then we are both in trouble." For the first time, he reached for her hand not as an act for cameras, but as something real. It was a moment suspended in time, quiet and trembling. The next day, the tabloids exploded with a new headline: CEO Adrian Cole and wife share a private moment at Sterling Gala. The photo captured that exact second, their fingers intertwined. The internet called it romantic. Adrian's board called it reckless. In a crisis meeting, one of the investors barked, "This woman is changing your image too fast." The markets do not like unpredictability. Adrian's calm facade cracked. She has done nothing wrong. If anything, she has given this company a heart. When the meeting ended, he returned to his office, furious. Maya waited for him there, unaware of what had been said. He paused at the door, looking at her. "You are making people talk," he said softly. "Good or bad?" "Both," he admitted. "But I would rather they talk than feel nothing at all." That night, he stood by her door longer than he should have. When she opened it, wearing a simple robe and confusion in her eyes, he only said, "Good night, Maya," and walked away before he did something foolish. But even behind separate doors, both knew that something irreversible had begun. The following days felt different. The air inside the penthouse was no longer cold marble and silence. It carried something unspoken, a fragile warmth that neither of them dared to name. Adrian became less of the CEO who issued instructions and more of the man who lingered by the kitchen counter to watch her make coffee. Sometimes their eyes met for no reason at all, and both would look away too quickly. The next major event came sooner than expected, a press conference where Adrian would announce the company's newest expansion. Maya's presence was required. His board wanted a united front, a symbol of stability. As she stood before the mirror that morning, Adjusting the sapphire ring on her finger, she wondered whether the lie had gone too far. Downstairs, Adrian was waiting in his suit, reading his notes. "Ready?" he asked. "As I will ever be," she said with a small smile. The conference hall overflowed with reporters and flashing cameras. Adrian spoke smoothly, a man in full control of his empire. But when a journalist turned to Maya and asked, "Mrs. Cole, how has marriage changed you?" the room went quiet. She hesitated, aware that every word would be dissected. "It has reminded me that even the busiest lives still need a reason to slow down," she said. "That love is not about perfection, but about showing up for someone, even when it is inconvenient." Adrian's gaze shifted toward her, surprised. The crowd erupted in applause, the quote instantly trending online. Backstage, he looked at her with something like admiration. "You did not have to say that," he murmured. "I wanted to," she replied, "because maybe it is true." That night, they celebrated quietly on the penthouse balcony. The city lights glittered below like a million beating hearts. "You have changed everything," Adrian said, handing her a glass of champagne. "No," she said softly. "I think you were just waiting for someone to remind you why you started all this." He smiled almost shyly. "You talk like a poet, Maya." "And you," she teased, "pretend not to be one." They laughed, and for a fleeting second, the world felt perfect. But perfection rarely lasts. The next morning, Adrian's assistant burst into his office, holding a tablet. "You need to see this," she said. On the screen was a leaked document, an internal copy of the marriage contract, complete with signatures and payment details. Within hours, social media exploded with accusations: fake marriage scandal, CEO buys love for IPO, Mrs. Cole exposed. By the time Maya saw the headlines, her hands were trembling. The same press that had once adored her now called her a fraud. Cameras camped outside the building, shouting questions. Adrian immediately held an emergency meeting, demanding to know who leaked it. The board blamed her. She must have sold the story, one investor said coldly. Adrian's voice rose, sharp as steel. "She would never." "Then who did?" the man challenged. Adrian's jaw clenched. He knew exactly who had access to those documents. Vanessa Sterling's PR team had connections everywhere. When he returned home, Maya was standing by the window, her eyes red. "Did you know?" she asked. "Did you know this could happen?" "I am fixing it," he said quickly. "You do not have to face them." "But I do," she said, voice breaking, "because it is my name out there. They're calling me a liar, Adrian." "I will protect you," he said, stepping closer. "How?" she demanded. "By hiding me?" She turned away, tears streaking down her face. "You said this was business, but it stopped feeling that way weeks ago. Now I do not even know what is real." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Maya, please." "No," she whispered. "You have your empire to save. I just have myself." And with that, she walked out, the elevator doors closing between them. That night, the penthouse felt colder than ever. Adrian stood alone in the dark, the city sprawling below him like a reminder of everything he had built and everything he had just lost. He picked up her sketchbook from the couch. Inside was a drawing of the two of them standing side by side beneath a skyline of stars. Underneath, she had written one line: "Contracts end. Love should not." For the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt powerless. Not because of money, not because of scandal, but because the one thing he could not control had finally taught him what it meant to feel. The scandal spread like wildfire. By the second day, every news channel carried Maya's face beside bold headlines that twisted the truth. The world that had once adored the fairy tale of a billionaire and a waitress now tore it apart with suspicion and ridicule. Maya stayed hidden in a small apartment across the river, one she could barely afford but where no one knew her name. She deleted every message from her phone except one: Adrian's last text: "Please, let me explain." She could not bring herself to answer. Across town, Adrian fought to keep control of his company as shareholders demanded explanations. His board accused him of deception. His stock price dipped, and whispers filled every hallway of the LumaPay tower. But the only thing he cared about was finding Maya. He sent flowers, letters, messages that were never returned. At night, he would replay her last words in his mind. I just have myself until they hurt. Days later, a photo appeared online showing Maya volunteering at a community art center. She was painting a mural for local kids, her face calm, but her eyes distant. Adrian stared at the image for a long time, realizing she had not run from him. She had simply gone back to being who she was before him. That realization changed everything. The next morning, he walked into a board meeting with an expression that silenced the room. "I'm stepping down as CEO," he announced. Gasps filled the air. This company was built on trust, and somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what that meant. If my presence is now a liability, then I will remove it. An investor sneered. "Is this another stunt for your wife?" Adrian's eyes hardened. "My wife taught me more about integrity in a few weeks than any of you have in a lifetime." He signed a resignation letter and walked out, leaving behind the empire he once worshipped. That evening, rain fell over the city as Adrian arrived at the community art center. Inside, Maya stood on a ladder, painting soft blue lines across the wall. She turned when she heard his voice. "You should not be here," she said quietly. "Maybe not," he replied, stepping closer. "But I needed to tell you something before the world tells it wrong again." She climbed down, wiping paint from her hands. "What could you possibly say now?" "That I am sorry," he said simply, "for dragging you into my chaos, for letting you stand alone when I should have been beside you. Sorry does not fix headlines, Adrian." "No," he said, "but maybe it can fix what is left between us." He took a folded paper from his coat pocket and handed it to her. It was his resignation letter. "You gave up everything," she whispered. "Not everything," he said. "I still have a choice to live by what you taught me." For a long moment, they stood in silence as the rain tapped softly against the windows. "So what now?" she asked finally. "Now," he said, "we rebuild. But this time we do it honestly." The next scene unfolded quietly. Over the following weeks, Adrian used his personal wealth to establish the Luma Foundation, a nonprofit that funded art programs, healthcare support, and job training for low-income families. He named Maya as co-director. At first, she refused. "People will think this is another cover-up." "Then let them think," he said. "We will show them through action." Gradually, the narrative began to shift. News outlets ran stories of the foundation's success, highlighting Maya's leadership and the projects she led across the city. One headline read, "From Scandal to Second Chances, Maya Cole's Mission to Rebuild Lives." One evening, after a long day at the center, Maya found herself standing on a rooftop, watching the sun dip behind the skyline. Adrian joined her quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You still take too much sugar," he teased softly. "Old habits," she said, smiling faintly. He looked at her, the fading light catching the reflection in her eyes. "You were right all along," he said. "Love is not a contract. It is a choice we make every day." She met his gaze. "And what do you choose, Adrian?" He took a deep breath. "You. Without the lies, without the boardrooms, without the headlines. Just you." She said nothing, but the tears that filled her eyes were answer enough. The city lights flickered to life below, and for the first time since the storm began, peace settled over both of them. Months passed, and the noise of the scandal slowly faded, replaced by stories of redemption and purpose. The Luma Foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Maya poured her heart into every project teaching art to children, organizing charity drives, and rebuilding the same neighborhoods she once struggled to survive in. Adrian kept a quieter role, handling logistics, funding, and the less glamorous side of the work. Their partnership became effortless, a rhythm built on respect instead of reputation. Yet beneath the calm, new challenges waited. One afternoon, while reviewing grant proposals, Maya discovered irregularities in the foundation's accounts. Someone had been diverting funds. She confronted Adrian immediately. "Do you know about this?" she asked, showing him the files. His eyes darkened as he scanned the numbers. "No, but I have a suspicion who might." The next day, Adrian met with a private investigator who confirmed his fear. Vanessa Sterling, the ex-fiancée, had bribed a former board accountant to falsify documents and leak them to the media. The plan was simple: ruin Maya's credibility again and destroy what they had rebuilt. Adrian's jaw tightened as he listened to the report. "She is trying to finish what she started," he said. "Then let us not give her the chance," Maya replied. Together, they prepared a detailed statement, complete with evidence of the embezzlement and names of those involved. But before going public, Maya insisted on confronting Vanessa herself. They met in the same luxury hotel where the first scandal had broken months earlier. Vanessa smiled coldly. "Still playing charity queen, I see." Maya held her ground. "I'm not here to trade insults. I am here to tell you this stops now. You can keep your gossip, but you will not touch the people we help." Vanessa's smirk faded when Maya placed a folder on the table. Inside were proof of transactions and messages linking her to the fraud. "You underestimated me," Maya said quietly. "You thought I was still that girl who did not belong. But I do now." Later that night, the story hit every major outlet. Expose evidence clears Maya Cole, reveals corporate sabotage by Sterling Group. Public sympathy flooded back. The same media that once tore her apart now praised her courage. At the foundation, the next morning, volunteers greeted her with flowers and applause. Adrian waited in his office, watching the coverage. When Maya entered, he stood and smiled. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," she corrected. He stepped closer. "I never told you how proud I am of you." She looked at him, her voice barely steady. "You do not have to." "I know," he said, "but I want—" For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he added, "The board has asked me to return as CEO, but only if you agree to stand beside me." Maya shook her head gently. "We already built something better, Adrian. Something real." He nodded, understanding. "Then let us keep it that way." That evening, they stood once again on the rooftop, the skyline glowing beneath a fading sunset. The chaos had finally quieted. The contract that once chained them had become a bridge one built from truth, forgiveness, and the quiet power of love that no scandal could ever destroy. Spring arrived quietly, painting the city with colors that felt like renewal. For the first time in years, Adrian walked through the streets without security, blending into the crowd like an ordinary man. Beside him, Maya carried a sketchbook under her arm, her laughter softer but freer than it had ever been. The Luma Foundation had become a symbol of hope, its projects expanding to cities across the country. What began as a desperate contract had turned into a mission that touched real lives. One morning, Adrian called a staff meeting and announced the launch of a new initiative, a scholarship program for underprivileged artists. When the team applauded, Maya noticed his voice tremble slightly, emotion breaking through the usual calm. After the meeting, she teased him gently. "You are getting sentimental, Mr. Cole." He smiled. "Maybe I'm catching it from you, Mrs. Cole." The words hung there for a heartbeat too long, both remembering that they were not technically married anymore. Yet neither wanted to correct it. That evening, Adrian invited her to the art gallery downtown, the same one she used to visit when she was still waitressing. The lights were dim, the air smelling faintly of paint and polished wood. As they walked through the exhibits, Maya stopped short. On the central wall hung a new installation, a collection of her own sketches, framed and signed. Above them was a single title engraved in gold, "The Art of Maya Cole." She turned to him, stunned. "Adrian, what is this?" He met her gaze, his voice quiet but sure. "It is yours. Every piece you drew when you thought no one noticed. They deserve to be seen." Her eyes filled with tears. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said. "You once told me that art is proof of what we survive. This is mine for you." As the crowd began to fill the room, murmuring admiration, Maya realized that this was not just a gesture. It was a confession. At the end of the evening, Adrian took the stage. The lights dimmed, and all eyes turned to him. "Months ago," he began, "I asked someone to marry me for all the wrong reasons. I thought I was protecting my company, my image, my pride. But she taught me that love is not something you buy or negotiate. It is something you earn, one act of truth at a time." His voice wavered slightly as he looked toward Maya. "Tonight, I'm not here as a CEO. I am here as a man who finally understands what it means to love without conditions." He stepped down from the stage and crossed the room. The guests parted in silence as he approached her. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. Inside was a simple ringio sapphire, no diamonds, just a thin band of silver that matched the necklace she always wore. No contracts, he said softly. No pretending. Just us. For real this time. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered. Adrian, he smiled. Marry me again, Maya. But this time, let's write the ending ourselves. The applause that followed was thunderous, but neither of them heard it. All that existed in that moment was the promise between them, genuine, fragile, and beautifully real. As they embraced beneath the soft glow of the gallery lights, the world finally saw what their story had always been about: not scandal or power, but redemption, grace, and the kind of love that begins where pride ends. The news of their engagement spread across the city, but this time there were no scandals, no headlines dripping with doubt. Instead, the world saw something real: two people who had walked through fire and learned how to love in the light. Weeks later, under a sky brushed with gold and rose, Maya and Adrian stood in the heart of the very gallery that had once brought them together. The ceremony was small, private, filled with the people they trusted: the volunteers from the foundation, a few close friends, and her mother, healthy again and smiling brighter than ever. There were no photographers, no staged poses, only quiet joy. Maya wore a simple ivory dress, her hair pinned with a single silver comb. Adrian looked at her like he was seeing the sunrise for the first time. When the officiant asked for their vows, Adrian spoke first. You once told me that contracts end, but love should not, he said, his voice steady and warm. You were right. What started as a promise on paper became a promise in my heart. I do not need signatures to prove it anymore. I just need you. Maya's hands trembled as she took his. You taught me that love is not about grand gestures or perfect timing, she said. It is about staying when everything falls apart, about believing in what cannot be bought. You are my second chance, Adrian, and I will not waste it. The guests wiped their tears as the two exchanged rings, the same silver band he had given her that night, now shining brighter than before. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, applause filled the gallery. But Adrian did not wait for the cue. He kissed her like a man who had finally come home. Later, as the evening melted into soft music and laughter, Maya stepped aside to look at one particular painting, the sketch of the bridge she had once drawn in her darkest days. Below it, a small plaque read, "The Bridge of Second Chances." She smiled, realizing how far they had come from a wrong number to a marriage that no one could have scripted. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Do you ever think about how it all started? He whispered. Every day, she said softly. A message sent to the wrong person, and it led me right where I was meant to be. He chuckled. Maybe fate is just life's way of fixing our mistakes. She turned to face him. Or maybe love is. Outside, the city lights flickered like scattered stars, and the rain began to fall soft, familiar, almost nostalgic. They stepped out into it, hand in hand, unafraid. For once, they did not rush to hide or seek shelter. The world could watch or forget, it did not matter anymore. Because for Maya and Adrian Cole, every wrong turn, every misunderstanding, every broken promise had led them here to a love that was not perfect but true. And as they walked into the rain, laughter echoing down the quiet street, one simple truth lingered in the air: real love needs no contracts, no conditions, only two hearts brave enough to begin.